Okay, and welcome to the podcast for NDV Healing and Support Incorporated. And today on our episode, we have Dr. Carmen Bryant, so we're very excited about that. Dr. Carmen Bryant is a therapist, and she also is an author, and she has a YouTube channel where she talks about all things about narcissistic abuse, so we definitely are very glad to have her. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so we're just going to get right into the topic of narcissist abuse. We have a lot of our members that join us from the nonprofit that ask a lot about narcissist abuse. So definitely it is important to us. Can you just tell us about narcissist abuse?
Well, now it's a very, very broad topic, but
Yes.
if you know, those that do watch the videos, when you're talking about narcissist abuse, what you're actually talking about is domestic violence. That's what you're talking about. And a lot of people dissociate the two because the term narcissist abuse is being just thrown around when you're talking about toxic people or people that have, you know, they may be arrogant, they haven't grown up yet, or what I say, the player, you know, so people kind of throwing that out. But when you're talking about narcissist abuse, you're talking about someone that is in a domestic violence situation and is being abused by someone that possibly could have narcissistic personality disorder, which is the cluster B personality disorders. And they have a very, if you watch a lot of the videos, if you listen to a lot of podcasts and coaches, there's very distinction at how they abuse. For a lot of people, when they abuse, you know, if you look at some of the survivors of, there's no such thing as regular domestic violence. Domestic violence is domestic violence. But if you look at, you know, domestic violence versus those that are being abused by someone that has narcissistic personality disorder, you'll notice that, you know, some of them may have drug addictions and they can go to counseling. They go to counseling first, you know, and then they can kind of blend that family back in and they can have some type of healthy relationship, which is not a perfect relationship, but a healthy relationship. But when you're dealing with an individual that has narcissistic personality disorder, you're talking about an individual that has a very distinctive personality dysfunction disorder or character flaw, which is permanent, which is basically has grown with them from childhood up until adulthood. And then as we talk about, you know, the lower range, the mid range, the greater narcissist, it just gets worse with time because it kind of intertwines with their personality. It becomes who they are. And so that, you know, when you're talking about narcissist abuse, it is domestic violence. It just so happened it's by an individual that has that disorder or possibly could have that disorder.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because I think a lot of people get confused, and you are correct. Like I've seen where a lot of people kind of throw that term around, and especially the word narcissist is probably like one of the biggest terms that sometimes people throw around. So thank you for clearing that up. Can you also talk like a little bit about trauma bonding? Because there's so many, well, like you said, narcissist abuse is it's such a broad topic because there's so many different terms that a lot of times people don't know. Like they don't know about the gaslighting, the triangulation, and of course trauma bonding. Can you talk a little bit about those terms?
So in the world of narcissism, you know, when you look at, because you are a domestic violence support group, and you know, if you talk to the average advocate or those that teach about domestic violence, such as myself, who did it at one point in time until I understood what the abuse of a narcissist looks like, because most people do not know the terminology. There's a whole world or terminology, the flying monkeys, the trauma bonding, the gaslighting, you know, we know of the gas, there's certain language that we know, but we didn't know that language went together. And so most people, like the therapists or people, domestic violence advocates, they talk about the domestic violence piece, but they never get in detail with what is happening, because being abused by an individual that has narcissistic personality disorder, it goes deeper than just physical abuse, psychological abuse. There is a method, there is a pattern that they're using. And in the cycle of, you know, if you look at domestic violence, you have the, you know, the honeymoon, the tension building, the blow up, the honeymoon. So that's that cycle within a domestic violent relationship. Now, add on to that a person with narcissistic personality disorder, you have the idealization, the devaluation, and the discard. And this is the cycle of the narcissistic personality disorder. Well, trauma bonding occurs when, first of all, when you're establishing it with the average relationship, you're establishing a rapport, you're getting to know that individual. You know, trauma bonding for that narcissist it deals with a whole lot more than just a relationship. They're very intense. They're very what word would I want to use? Very, very strategic in how they get people to have a relationship with them. It's not even a relationship, it's how they get people to bond to them dysfunctionally. And that trauma bonding, you know, when they're trauma bonding with you, think about what the term itself, trauma bonding, bonding to someone through trauma. When you're taking a person through the idealization, you make them feel good about themselves. You open a person up, just like a therapist. You open the person up, you get to know their secrets, you know. And a therapist, what they do is they're creating a bond, but a professional bond. They open that person up. They want to know the secrets. I need to know your secrets. I need to know some of the root causes. I need to know how to help you, and then seal you up and then let you go. Well, with a narcissist, they open you up, and now all the chemicals, because the chemicals that are you know, manifesting, or the chemicals in your brain, the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin, all those chemicals are at work, and you are so, because everything that they're saying is really just opening you wide up. The oxytocin is a chemical that is released when a woman has a baby. This is the chemical that helps the cervix to open. This is the chemical that when the baby, you know, nurses on the breast is released in order to create a bond with that baby. Now think about it. If you're creating a bond with a baby in a healthy way, that bond with a child, then that same oxytocin, that same chemical is being released to cause a dysfunctional bond with that narcissist. You know, the serotonin, you know, the dopamine, the feel-good chemicals in your brain, all this is being activated because that narcissist is telling you everything that you ever want to hear based off of the scenario you have laid out to them. Most people don't realize that as you're building a relationship with people, you're telling them your secrets, you're telling them your hurts, you're telling them their pains. The narcissist is taking that information and they're using that information against you, but they're using that information because they need to know what role to play in your life. If you are hurt, if you've had bad relationships, you come from a bad relationship, anything that you tell them now, they're going to play that role. So now they're going to take you through this phase. I've loved you so much. I have presented myself to you, which actually they're presenting the last supply to you. So you're really falling in love with that last supply because that person does not have a core personality. So they're presenting that last person they mirrored to you. They're presenting the good aspect, everything that they hate about that person now, and what they loved on that person now is what they're presenting. So you are falling in love with an image, an illusion of this individual. Now, all these chemicals, you are now addicted to an individual. So after they have loved you, all of a sudden now you'll notice they start gaslighting you, making you unstable, making you feel like you're crazy. Everything that was wonderful about you at one time now is horrible about you. At one point in time, you were the most beautiful person. Now, all of a sudden, you question how beautiful you are. You start questioning your education. Was the education right? That is a part of that trauma bonding. You're cussing you out now. All of a sudden, they're ghosting you. All of a sudden, they're giving you the silent treatment. They're trying to see how far they can take you. And that's how they determine good supply too. How far I can take you on that edge before you decide to leave. I got to take you as far as I can go until I am satisfied with the fact that no matter what I do to you, you will not leave. It's the Stockholm syndrome. And the Stockholm syndrome is basically the same thing. The Stockholm syndrome was during that time when Patty Hearst fell in love with the person that was keeping her hostage, the people that were robbing the bank. But out of fear and survival, she ended up connecting with this individual, falling in love, and then siding with this individual. Same thing during the trauma bonding. Out of survival, you're wanting to appease this person. You want what you saw in the very beginning. You want that first high. That's what you want. But they now have you on this cycle. I'm going to idolize you, make you feel good about yourself. Then I'm going to devalue you. I'm going to gaslight you. I'm probably going to physically abuse you. I might ghost you. I might silent treat you, all so that I can maintain control over you. And the average person is stuck in this cycle and is trauma bonded to this individual. So when people say, I just don't understand, why won't you leave the relationship? For a narcissist, a person that's in a narcissist relationship, it goes well beyond a choice. You are now addicted to an individual. The narcissist is addicted to fuel. That's what most people get confused. They're not addicted to people. They're addicted to the fuel, that ego boost, that what you said to make me feel good, to make me feel valued, to make me feel like I'm somebody. And you are addicted to the narcissist because you now want any kind of attention you can get, whether it's negative or positive attention. When your fuel levels go down, because you're no longer high, you need that high. Even if they've left you and there was someone else, if they just cuss me out, I will get some kind of boost and feel better. It won't even feel better about myself, but just the simple fact that you got that, that is that chemical dysfunctional bond that you have within that trauma bonding. That's why it's so hard to come out, because it's so hard to break that bond. That's just like breaking an addiction. You can't tell a meth head or a crackhead or a heroin addict will just stop using drugs. There's more to it. And most chemical dependency, those that are listeners that are chemical dependency counselors understand that you can't just tell a person just to stop taking the drug. With heroin, they go through some severe withdrawals where they have to have methadone, or there's Suboxone, I think it is, that help them they have to get another drug in order to help them come off the drug without dying. Their heart rate goes down. Some of them may have heart attacks. Same with alcohol. You can't just tell someone to stop drinking alcohol that's been addicted to alcohol, because they actually can die. Blood pressure go up, blood pressure go down, they can die. So what makes people think that is that easy to break a trauma bond with an individual that has so psychologically abused you? And on top of that, you don't understand the cycle of narcissist abuse, that trauma bond. That requires help. That requires a special type of training to understand how you're helping this person come out of this addiction, this trauma bond, this chemical dependency. You can't just, you may as well just start new agencies now where people have to learn how to come out of the addiction with a trauma bond. That's how powerful that trauma bond is.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you said that there should be, like, you might as well start new agency, because so many people, I think they don't really feel, like you said, I don't really think sometimes they understand the trauma bond and how powerful it is, and how it is, an addiction. And just like with the alcohol, you put that drink in front of the alcohol, an alcoholic, they're going to have a hard time staying away from it, just like the person who is addicted to that person is going to have a hard time staying away from them, because they've been through that whole love bombing phase where this person has made them feel like, this is the one for them. And then the next thing they've been devalued, and now they're trying to get that love bombing phase back, which won't come back.
And this is why some people actually look for the Hoover. I want this person to Hoover me just so I can feel significant. Why are they not Hoovering? So now the victim is looking for the Hoover, and we're telling them, stay no contact. Don't go no contact. Stay no contact. Do not make contact, and they're looking for the Hoover. Well, they haven't Hoovered me. Why are they not Hoovering me? That right there draws them back, but they know that it's hurting you even more. It hurts more for me not to Hoover you than to Hoover you. So they know the game that they're playing. And even with addictions, if you listen to addiction counselors, inside the facility, when they're teaching them, they're also teaching them coping mechanism. They're teaching them how not to go around their familiar surroundings, how to stay away from familiar crowds, how to stay away from, all those things that are triggering them. That's the exact same thing that we're teaching people that are coming out of narcissist abuse. We have to teach them coping mechanism, meaning how to stay from familiar crowds, how to stay away from the flying monkeys, how to break, how to make sure you gray rock. All that we're teaching victims of domestic violence is almost similar to what they're teaching, not similar meaning in drug addiction, but similar at the tactics we have to use, or the strategies we have to use to break the trauma bond to help these people get away from narcissists, same as in the facility dealing with drug addictions.
Yeah, because I think that is a good piece too, because I've seen that a lot too, where I've talked to a lot of victims that have gone no contact and they've been away, but they are waiting for that Hoover. They're like, well, why isn't this, it's been such and such months, they haven't called me, they haven't talked to me, and even though they've been no contact for those months, they're still waiting for that person. Well, how come they just discarded and they haven't called me back? So that is a big one, and that I see a lot.
And narcissists gets thought fuel. Just the thought of you suffering at the fact that they're not Hoovering you gives them fuel. So they get thought fuel off of that, because they know you. Each individual narcissist knows each individual person that they're with. Each supply is different, but they know that you may be a type of person that craves some attention. So they know that instead of Hoovering you right away, they know that you'll suffer more if I don't Hoover you. That is thought fuel to know that you're suffering. And then when they're done doing what they're doing, where they need some more fuel and it looks like you're happy, they can't tolerate that. So they have to come and hoover you then. And then the cycle starts all over again.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about some of the other things too, like triangulation and gaslighting? Because some of the listeners are not familiar with some of the terms.
So gaslighting, the term itself came from a movie, I think back in the 1940s, something 40s or something like that. But it was I don't know, so please forgive me. I don't know everything in detail anymore. I have to go look it back up. But I think the movie was about this wealthy lady. I don't know if her aunt had died or someone had died. She had money. And this guy decided he wanted to marry her because he wanted her money. But what he started doing is making her think that she was going crazy. So what he would do is the house at the time was lit by gas, you know, it was the gaslight. It was the gaslight. So what he would do is he would go upstairs and he would start flickering the lights. And so when she started complaining about the lights flickering, he would make her feel like she was going crazy. That was the whole point, to drive her crazy, to alter her reality. So gaslighting, what a narcissist is doing is they're causing you to be unstable. They're causing you to question your reality. It could be something as simple as your education. And then they'll start quoting stuff and don't know where they get it from, or they may get it from somewhere, but they'll quote and make you think that your education wasn't even worth getting. You know, everything now, they're creating an unstable environment, but that's also a part of that trauma bonding. They're creating an unstable environment. They can do things like your keys. You always set your keys on the table every time you come in, every night, because every morning when you get up, your keys are right, or you hang it right there at the door, you know, and then all of a sudden your keys are not there. So you start questioning your reality. And like I always, for years, have hung my keys right there on that door. So why are my keys gone? And they'll say things like, see, I told you, remember when we first met and you told me that you had PTSD. Remember when you used to think something was going on with you and something might be wrong with your memory. See, I think there's proof now that you're going crazy. Something is wrong. But you see how they take something from the past and bring it forward? So they've used all that again. They've used that for kryptonite. So they want to make your foundation unstable now. One of the main things is they want you to rely on them for all information, all truth. They have literally become your God. But gaslighting is for the whole purpose of causing you to question your reality and your truth. And I tell everyone, whatever your truth the triangulation is like vetting somebody else against each other. Can you still hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep. No, yeah, it's just going out a little bit, but that's
good. Okay. So triangulation is almost like vetting one person against the other person. And what they're doing is say, for example, and most common that most people know is when they get a new supply. And so they're grooming this new supply the same way that they groomed you. And that new supply becomes their flying monkey because they've smear campaigned you, right? And so now, of course, that new supply is there because that's my man or that's my woman. And I'm gonna make sure that I'm there for them because you weren't. You can hear everything that they've said about you. So now they're gonna triangulate because everything that they say to this new supply is gonna cause, maybe, possibly, if it's an immature supply, will cause that supply to fight with them against you. And so you're fighting the supply and the new supply is fighting you based off of what that narcissist has said, to a point where the narcissist doesn't have to fight. All they have to do is give that new supply some information and that new supply will come after you. But for you and the new supply to argue, you're triangulating around that narcissist, and they get fuel to see two people fighting over them. Or let's say, for example, you have a step parent and you have the new supply and you have a child. And so let's say that the step parent or the narcissist now does things and creates the golden child out of their own child. And they attack the new step parent, you know, they attack their child. So they attack their child, but they make their child the golden child. Now, either way it go is very, you know, dysfunctional, but the new parent now has a child. The child becomes a scapegoat. This is the person that narcissist is now attacking. And then you have their child that is the golden child. Well, they have just triangulated. Number one, they've triangulated the kids. the two kids are now against each other because why does he or she get favorable treatment and then I get treated so harshly? Or now you're also vetting the new parent, the step parent, you're the new supply against the child, and then the new supply against the parent. But do you see all these triangles? So it's not just one triangle. He's triangulating or she's triangulating with everyone. But the whole purpose of that is because they get fuel out of it. They get fuel watching people. It's like they're fighting a fight that has nothing to do with them whatsoever. It's a fight that they created. It's a scenario that they have created. So all these people are fighting, and it's these triangles, all these triangles in the relationship. That's what triangulation is. Vetting one person against the other to fight because they need fuel to feel better about themselves.
Yeah, and I've heard that in some of the with some of the other victims too. Like usually it's with the new supply, but I've also heard too that sometimes in their family they were the scapegoat, and then there was a golden child growing up, and they were triangulated in that way too. So I've heard both scenarios too a lot.
Absolutely.
And what do you think why do you think it's so important to learn about narcissist abuse?
Well, it's on the rise. You know, it is on the rise. I mean, me as a clinician, and I've taught about, and I have been an advocate, you know, against domestic violence since I was in the military. You know, and of course, if you listen to some of my videos, I did say I too am a survivor. You know, so you know, survivors know what they've gone through. And I think the thing is that, and the reason why I'm so adamant with a lot of other coaches to educate about narcissist abuse is because nobody believed me. Nobody believed I didn't have the language. I didn't understand what it was at the time. I just knew that the things that it was a covert narcissist, a covert malignant narcissist. And all I knew is I was going through domestic violence, but I couldn't prove it because everything that we talk about on video is everything that they were doing. And so it really got under my skin because people actually advocated for the narcissist. And everything that, you know, most of us have narcissistic traits, you know, but everything, you know, you can pick out narcissistic traits in other people. So a narcissist will pick out the narcissistic traits in you and make you look. And I got tired of watching that over and over again. And then I had clients coming in, and at the time I didn't understand, you know, the language. I didn't understand the nature of the narcissist. I knew about most therapists. They know about the disorder. They just don't know how these people function in relationships. We look at the manual and it says dysfunctional relationships, their grandiosity. Play that out for me and let me see what that looks like, because I see the wording in the book and I see a person that has no, okay, they're arrogant, they're, you know, they're self-righteous, but no, play it out and tell me what it looks like in a relationship. And I was counseling people in my office, not understanding the nature of a narcissist and not realizing it was a narcissist they were with. And once I learned the language and understood the concept of what was happening and the strategy that they use, or their MO, their method of operation, their MO, then I began to have more breakthrough. And so when I begin to have more breakthrough with clients, I begin talking about it. And I noticed that most of us have the exact same story. You would have thought I was talking about your husband, or someone would have thought about I was talking about their mother, you know, and I would, you know, or my mother, who knows, or my uncle, you know, but all of us, it was like, the theme was exactly right. Everybody had almost the exact same stories. And so I felt it was very relevant to get this information out. You know, I also have a good friend of mine that works in the domestic violence program. She was an advocate, and now she's a legal advocate, I think she is. And the thing about her is she was in the court system watching the narcissist play the game in the court system. So she's watching people get their children taken away, and they're being given to the narcissist for the narcissist to keep abusing. Some of the things that these narcissists was doing and having these women in the shelters look like they're gaslighting them. And so I felt it was very relevant to make sure that we get this information out so people know that they're not crazy. What you're going through is what you're going through. And let's make sure that we let the counselors know. Let's make sure we let the legal institutions know. Let's make sure the lawyers and the judges know, because these people are being abused, and it's not physical abuse. Some of them are not physically being abused. They're being psychologically abused. And a lot of therapists or researchers are now talking about it, and the information is getting out there. It's becoming a little harder to get away with that behavior because now people are informed. When you have knowledge, you notice things. So it's getting a little harder because it's becoming more obvious, and it's on the rise. You know, it's on the rise. You know, look at the stars. Look at what we have going on in the news. You see it, and you, now that you have the information, you can point it out. You can point it out. You can tell what's going on.
Yeah, that is so true too, because from a lot of victims, I do hear about the court system and how they feel basically re-victimized by the court system because the narcissist knows how to play the game with the court system. They know how to gaslight. They know how to manipulate. I've also seen too, where I've heard a lot of victims, they've come and they've talked about their families and how the narcissistic parent is pointing out traits in them and saying, no, you're the narcissist. So I've seen several of those scenarios happen as well. So yeah, I would say that that is very important.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about the friends that you're around, or the people that are around, well-meaning people that, just work it out and go to counseling. But it always tends to be your fault. Something that you haven't done to cause this person to be that way. Nothing that I do can cause a person to be abusive and psychologically abusive. It doesn't matter. You're still responsible and accountable for your own behavior. And so a lot of times well-meaning people, say the wrong things. Well, okay, well, if it's not working, just leave. Or, you two just argue too much. I'm not part of that. Won't you just go? Or I don't believe that he or she would do that. I don't believe, that's not in their character. That's not the type of person that they are. They're a giving they're a loving person. They're the head beacon. They give the most to contribute the most to big organization. They're the most loved, but you have no idea what's happening behind closed doors. So I hate when people make these assumptions, but you have no idea what it takes for a woman or a man to maintain that happy face when they go out, that facade of happiness and everything is well, because they're ashamed. But when they go home, they're being abused. They're going through hell. The family's going through hell. The children are going through hell. They're being abused. No one knows, and no one will believe them.
Yeah, I think, and that's a huge piece too, because with the narcissist, they have on that mask, and a lot of times they'll go out into the public and they're just so nice and they're so charming and everyone loves them and everyone say, no, they wouldn't do that and they wouldn't be like that. But you have no idea what they're like when they go home and they take off that mask.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I definitely can see that piece, because that's how people question themselves, because then they say, well, I've told so-and-so that this is what's happening, but they don't believe them because of how they are when the public is watching.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you actually have a book too that talks about that. It's Unmasking the Illusion of Perfection.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yes, can you talk a little bit about your book? You don't have to go like full detail, but can you just talk a little bit about your book?
The book is real stories about real people that have been through narcissist abuse. And the way that I wrote the book, in the beginning, I kind of broke it down a little bit just to give an understanding of what narcissism is. And then I took stories of people that have been through it. Remember, I said earlier, you can look at the 9 traits of narcissism. And if they meet the 5 out of 9 traits, that's the diagnosis is narcissistic personality disorder. But we say that, but what does it look like? And so when I wrote the book, I wrote the book so that people can see it play out. Instead of me saying, okay, this is what this trait is, this is what this trait is. No, I made sure that I played it out in the book so you can see different scenarios, not only different scenarios, but the shame behind it, because there were people that had high positions in there. There were people that, that were leading people, that were, in positions of power, that people were watching them. And I broke it down where people, because a lot of people deal with shame. And I broke it down where people actually told about what they were thinking when they were going through it and how they got to that point, how they were groomed by family members, how they had family, parents, grandparents that were narcissists and were groomed to think the way that they thought. And so I think in one scenario was, now that you have children, because during that time you weren't a single mother. And, for you to have children, you are now never going to be number one in anyone's life. No man will ever want you with children, which was solidified by the father by saying, if you have children, if you have 1, you're already second on the list. But if you have 2, you're already at bottom of the barrel. And so the woman actually lived her life assuming that no one ever wants me, or I'll always be second to everyone. I'll even always be the side chick, second to everyone, because I'm ruined. But this is all the things that were told her, and that's how she ended up getting into a narcissistic relationship, because she just wanted to be loved. And then to leave out of it some of the things that they were doing to groom the children, how they were grooming the children, how they were abusing the children, the thoughts that she had on her mind, you know, about homicide and suicide. You know, and these are some of the things that people are afraid to talk about. The fact that they actually thought about killing the person. You know, if you watch the movie Dirty John, he ended up getting killed. I hate to be a movie buster, but he ended up the only way. And even the police detectives and everything, they were relieved that he ended up getting killed at the end. But these were some of the thoughts on these women's mind, and some people are ashamed to say that. So when I wrote that book, I wrote the book to play out the scenarios. These are real people. This is not made up. These are real people that actually went through what they went through, what was on their mind, what were they going through, what were they thinking, you know, how were they treated, you know, how this narcissist was getting away with stuff and no one knew what this narcissist was doing and how he was grooming the kids.
Yeah. And I think you said something too that's important, is the shame too, because there's so much shame too. I've come across too, like with victims of narcissist abuse. There's shame because, like you said, they have these thoughts, but at the time that they have those thoughts, you know, they're going through agony. They're going through a lot. So, you know, there's no shame in that because they're being put through so much. Then the other thing I see too that they have shame is they'll have shame from the fact that, like you said, there are some people that are being really high positions and of prestige, and they're ashamed. They say, well, how did I fall into this, and how did this happen to me? But you know, that love bombing phase, they're extremely manipulative. And then
very convincing.
Yes, they are, and they're extremely manipulative and convincing. And so a lot of times people have shame because of they think of their position. Well, I should have known. But unless you know about narcissist abuse, which is why it's so important, and it's so good that you're out there and you have your YouTube channel and you're educating people, because unless you know about it, you know, you come across it, you may not even know what you're coming across.
Absolutely.
And what do you think is some of the things that are the most misunderstood about narcissist abuse?
One of the biggest things that I notice is that most people that are coming out of narcissist abuse or struggling with coming out of narcissist abuse, they try to think the way that they think that a narcissist thinks, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So you're using your rational mind to try to figure out why the narcissist is doing what the narcissist is doing. And so many people that I've talked to, it's always, I just don't understand. How can this person leave after 20, 30 years of marriage? How can they leave everything behind and jump into a relationship with a person they barely know and pretend like I never existed? You know, I don't understand, why would they do this or why would they do that? Because they're trying to understand the narcissist based off of their own goodness, based off of their morals and values. Well, you have to understand that a narcissist does not think like we think. They're in survival mode. So say, for example, if you're angry or you're hurt, or, you know, most of the time we yell, scream, and get it out. Well, narcissist turns that in, you know, say even if you're hurt, you know, if you're hurt and someone has hurt your feelings, most of the time we show it, you know, or say it or show it. A narcissist turns everything inside, and it's almost like, now you have to die. You know, now I have to get you back because you either outdid me, you outthought me, you hurt me. So everything, I have to get back at you. And so most people are trying to figure these people out based off of their goodness. And a narcissist is not like us. They are dysfunctional. And this is the main thing that I used to tell people. Have you ever been around a person that has schizophrenia or autism? You can't look at them, excuse me, you can't look at them and tell them you need to shake this off. You need to come back to reality. Their delusional world is their reality. That's why they're on medication. You know, there is no cure for schizophrenia that we know of at this particular time, you know, but there is medication that kind of keeps the voices down, that keeps them from having, you know, delusional outbreak. You got people running down the street butt naked, you know, because they're not on medication or unmedicated, or someone that has autism, especially if it's moderate to severe autism. You know, they may be a 30, 40-year-old person, and but their mindset is that of a 8, 9-year-old. You can't tell them to shake it off. And, you know, so when we're looking at narcissists, you say, I can't believe that you're 30, 40 years old and you conduct yourself that way. That's because you don't understand narcissism, because on the inside, they have developed, it's almost like a developmental delay. It's more of a arrested development. The inside of them, you know, how they function, if you think about it, is like how kids function. I'm gonna get you back. Mine, my daddy's bigger than your daddy. Oh, you won? That I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna win again. I'm gonna get back in the relationship because you're not gonna break up with me. I'm gonna break up with you. Think about it. This is an adult situation that we're talking about, and we're talking about these things from the perspective of, you know, advocates and coaches. But in actuality, if you really break down what they're doing, they do what the kids are doing. That's why most people think kids are narcissists. They're not. That is a normal development phase for most children that have not been infected by a personality disorder. You know, but when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with the inside of them as a kid. They were damaged somewhere in their developmental stages. So the biggest thing is that most people look at these people. This is a judge, this is a lawyer, this is a police officer, this is an executive director, this is a politician, this is, you know, and I don't understand narcissism and the facade and what they portray is always, you know, I don't understand how this person thinks like that. Absolutely. Stop thinking the way that you think. That is not how they are.
No, and you'll run yourself in circles trying to think that they're going to think and act the way that you do, because their mind does not function the same way.
And most people, that's when most people are stuck in that cycle, and they can't get healing because their mind is so fixated on why. What if there is no why? They just do it out of survival. That's what they do.
And what made you go into, because I know you said, you talked a little bit about that you were a survivor yourself. Is that what made you go into like specializing in narcissist abuse, or what made you go into that?
Well, I grew up in domestic violence. And so every relationship that I ever had, when I had to overlook my life, every relationship that I ever had was a unstable, dysfunctional relationships type of domestic violence. I've never been in a relationship. Well, I have, but you know, the ones that are most memorable are the ones that were domestic violence. And when I was in the military and I got married, I did not know, you know, at that time that individual was a narcissist. I didn't know all this. You know, I hadn't gone to school yet. I didn't know all this. And so the more domestic violence that I was going through, and the more I was in a situation where I was being abused, my children were being abused, and I was trying to, you know, lead soldiers, train soldiers, and then I'm watching them go through some of the exact same things that I'm going through, but it's such a big secret that they think I'm perfect. Like, you know, there's no possible way that she can be going through anything. And so I'm hiding, because like the average victim, I'm hiding, and I use my job to help people. And so I was very adamant about rescuing people and helping people. Notice the word rescue people and helping people, because of the fact that now that I'm older and more skilled at what I do, I realized that I was trying to save myself in each person that I met. So I'm trying to save them from domestic violence, but I always saw myself, and I was always trying to rescue Carmen. That's who I'm not Carmen, not Dr. Bryant. I was trying to rescue Carmen and every individual person that I met that I saw was going through it. And I was very good at what I did. I was very good at encouraging them. But the problem was I wasn't good at taking my own advice. And the reason why was because of the fact that I didn't think it would work for me. It may work for you, but I don't think I was worth it even working for me. And then how am I supposed to get out of this? I'm full of shame. I have a military career. You know, my family, I'm the oldest in my family. You know, my siblings look up to me. I'm the one that gives them advice. How can I ever admit to them how bad it really is and what's really going on? No one's going to believe me because everybody loves him. Everybody thinks he's awesome and he's great. Now, there are some people that knew better, but everybody thought he was awesome and great. The church loved him. You know, the leadership loved him. So if I ever told my truth, you know, and then finally what happened is when I started breaking out I met my mentor. She became my pastor about 13, 14 years ago. I met my mentor. And the first time that I ever told a church leader, it was prior to meeting her, I told a church leader, I told a pastor that I was being abused. I even ran away from home, believe it or not. I know that's crazy being an adult, but I ran away from home. And I told the pastor that I was being abused, and it was brushed off. It was brushed off. And when it was brushed off, I was totally appalled. And when I met my mentor, and I began to because I had a problem with trust, I began to tell her pieces and parts of what I was going through. And she began to mentor me. And as she began to mentor me as a mother, as a spiritual mother, as a pastor, as a leader, I had more hope in church leadership because she didn't easily believe what was being said. And she knew that I was going through something, and she helped me through it to a point where I was bold enough to just leave. And really, when I look back at it, I'm like, I could have left a long time ago. I just didn't. But I suffered. My children suffered. And so from that experience and knowing that most people didn't believe me, he was a person that people loved, I realized how hard people have it. And it made me decide, you know what? I'm going to educate as many people as I can. I know what I felt like. I know what I went through. I know how long it took me to recover. I mean, 6 years and then 6 months where I cried nonstop. I couldn't cry, but I cried, but I couldn't let my kids see it. I couldn't let the people that I led see it, laid on the floor every night and cried. And I couldn't understand. I did the same thing that everybody else did. What did I do that was so bad? I know we have, that's that gaslighting that kicked in. I know I wasn't that bad. What did I do? How could I have made this work? I'm sorry, I clicked off you. There we go. How could I have made this work? What did I do? And I kept looking at myself. What can I have done? Even though I knew what was going on. And so with that information and then going into therapy and helping people and then hearing them say some of the same things that I was saying in my head really made me become an advocate. This time I'm not chasing behind myself. This time I'm going to educate and help people get strong enough to leave and recover from what they went through, because I know what it took and I know what I went through. So I'm going to help as many people as I can. That's how I ended up. And I love what I do. I love what I do because there's so many people they have that aha. I didn't have this information. Because I didn't have this information, I want to make sure that other people have the information that I didn't have. And I didn't have anyone to help me until I met my mentor. And that was long after I had been being abused. So I want to make sure that I'm there for people where I wasn't there, where people wasn't there for me. So I want to make sure that I can help as many people as I can so that we can bring a stop to this. We got to bring some law. They've got domestic violence laws, but they're not in detail because nobody knows about this. Nobody knows how to diagnose this. Nobody knows what they're looking for when it comes to this. It's always physical abuse. If it's not physical abuse, we can't do anything for you, and you have people getting killed every day. And they told them, this is what's happening. You got documentaries about it after the fact.
Yeah. And that's very true, especially with emotional abuse. I think we're still, the domestic violence laws, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but especially that is important too, because with the physical abuse, definitely with the law, they'll definitely have something in place for that. But a lot of times with the emotional abuse, there's a lot of hesitation to do anything when that is reported. And just, we're getting better even about like the stalking and things like that. But there were times where even that wasn't, there weren't things being done about. So yeah, and so definitely there has to be catch up with narcissist abuse too, because they're not even nowhere near that yet.
But think about, a lot of women have talked to me and men too. I'm not going to leave them out. I've heard as well that, I spoke to a gentleman that was probably like 6'5", 6'6", and his wife was probably about 5'8", 5'7", and he is a martial artist, and she was had cut him on his chest with a knife. He had stab wounds and cuts on his body. And the only thing that he did is put his hand on her chest to hold her back. He's trained at martial arts. So if he really wanted to hurt her, he could have hurt her. And all he does is put his hand on her to keep her away from cutting him. And she's cutting his arm. But he ends up getting arrested because he touched her. He ends up getting arrested because now she's the victim because he's 6'5", 6'6", and she's 5'7". There's no possible way this little woman can do this much damage to you. There's no possible way. Or what about the women that, the man is abusing them and then they fight back? And now there are scratch marks on his face. So he calls the police and she gets a no contact order or restraining order. She goes to court for domestic assault. That is so unfair. That is so unjust for these people. And the darn narcissists know exactly what to do to push the buttons to make it happen.
Yeah, and they know, and a lot of times too, they know exactly how to talk to the officers once the officers arrive. They know how to
Mhm.
manipulate the situation and how to act like they're the victim, and then, you know, now the wrong person who wasn't the aggressor, who was probably trying to either stop, or like you said, the woman was trying to fight back and defend herself, and now then they end up in jail. So yeah,
Oh,
our
I had the police called on me before, and the only reason why the police was called to me is because I just went gray rock. I stopped talking because I felt it escalating, and so I went gray rock. I stopped talking, and the next minute I know there was a police officer standing in my bedroom looking at me, asking what was the problem. I was like, I just stopped talking. He was arguing. I stopped talking, and then when he walked out the room, I listened to him give him the sob story about the fact that he was an Iraq veteran. You know, the sad, I'm an Iraqi veteran, you know, I'm a veteran of the Iraq, you know, the campaign, and I've got PTSD, and played it up. I was like, wow, thank God I wasn't swinging or anything like that. But think about it, I got the police call because I got quiet.
And actually, that brings up a good point. Can you talk a little bit about the gray rock method? Because some people they and I've had this too in some of the groups that I've had, where you suggest no contact, but there are some people that don't really want to do the no contact because of having the children in common, and so another method they could do is gray rock. Can you talk a little bit about the gray rock method?
If anybody is listening to the podcast, go outside and pick up a rock. What color is the rock? Now, whatever you do, insult that rock, go off on that rock, you know, spit on the rock, whatever you want to do on that rock, and tell me what type of emotional feedback you're going to get back from that rock. Nothing. Nothing. And when you gray rock, understandably, those that have children by a narcissist, obviously it's hard not to go no contact, because you can't, because the law dictates you have some type of communication in order to, and you know that narcissist will take advantage of that. When
Yeah.
you are gray rocking, you really have to put forth, it takes practice to get to gray rock well, because you're taking out your emotions concerning conversation or anything. That means there is no, most people like, I'm just trying to have a cordial conversation, a cordial relationship. I just want to, you know, just hello, how are you doing? I'm doing great. How are you doing? For a narcissist, there is no such thing. There is no such thing as a cordial, casual conversation. You don't do that. With a narcissist, you literally have to take off, because the more they talk to you, the more they're trying to get you to show your emotion. They're trying to see where you're at. And as long as you're talking to them, they know they have an open door. As long as you're talking, the more questions that they ask, and when you ha and laugh and everything, you know, number one, they're being fueled, but number two is letting them know where you are. So really, just like in the military, you have to go stealth. You have to turn off those sonars underwater so nobody knows that you're underwater. And by saying that, I mean, when you're dealing with that narcissist, they should have no way. It's almost like you put up bars to your heart, no matter how much you hurt, or no matter how good they look when you see them, their voice sexy, they sexy, it doesn't matter. Whatever they say, even if they say something crazy, do not react. There is no reaction. Yes, no, okay, thanks, 4 o'clock this time. And you have to know they're going to try everything to make you have a longer conversation. You don't have to have a longer conversation with the father or the mother of your kids. Now, they're going to try it, of course, but you still have to work on answering that question without putting emotions behind it, because they can sense frequencies, they can sense tone. And I say that, and I'm very adamant about that, because when I was in the military, when we were in the military, I was very, very meticulous at listening to tone. And we had to be very careful at the tone when we spoke to soldiers. There are inflections in your voice to let them know when you're angry, when you're serious, when this is just a briefing, when I'm giving you information, when I'm getting ready to tell you something. So it's very, very important to listen to inflections in the tone in people's voices. I deal with my mentor a lot, and I pay very close attention at the inflection in her voice. Is this something that is important and is a hot topic? You know, is this something that this is just a thought? We need to think about this. So I have to listen to the inflection in her voice to see where she is at. as something that I was trained to do in the military. Where if I'm trained to do that in the military, to listen to the inflection of people's voices, even a child can tell by the inflection of a parent's voice to see whether you're joking, whether you're angry. She don't feel like bothered. Like, oh, I asked the question, she sounds busy, or she don't seem like she's really, or he's really, But if we can do that as parents, if we can do that as leaders, a narcissist is just as good as doing that. And you have to learn. It's almost like being monotone. Until it actually, because when you're hurting, that's something that you have to put your thought to. Once you begin to heal, it's second nature to you not to put any thought to it, because I really don't want to be bothered with you. Think about people that you've gotten mad at, or people got mad at you, and then you just guys stop speaking. You get around, they're gray rocking you right then. You just don't realize they're gray rocking you. Hey girl, hey, what's wrong with you? Nothing. So we do it all the time. We just don't realize we do it. Now you have to do it, and you have to think about that you're doing it.
Yeah, and that's important too. I say that because, and I actually brought that up because a lot of the women in the group that our support group, they struggle with that, because some of them do have children with the narcissist, and of course there's exchange of, when there's joint custody, there's exchange of the children, and then the narcissist takes advantage of that time period to harass and say things to them. And so they say, well, I'm trying to go gray rock, but then the narcissist will be hurling insults. So I really wanted to touch on that, so that to give some of the listeners a piece of understanding on how that works. Because yeah, you're going to be hurting, and you're going to have that period where they're hurling insults at you, but you have to take that emotion on it, because the narcissist is really looking for anything they can get at that point.
One of the things that they can practice, and I hate to say and give you my secrets, but some of the things that I had to do when I first started practicing gray rock, when I was doing it in the military, we used to always joke around about the fact that, when you're walking down the hallways, if you don't want someone to stop you and start having a conversation, always make yourself look busy. Put a folder in your hand and walk fast. If you walk like you have a purpose, or you walk like you're busy, most people, they're not going to try to stop and talk to you, because you look like you're busy, and you're really not busy. You're trying to get away from them. And so one of the things I can say, and it sounds funny, but you have to learn how to implement it in your life. Always be busy. Always have something to do. Always is busy. Even when they're talking to you, whether, it may seem rude to you, but if you're doing something on the phone and they're in the middle of they start asking, hey, just take the kids. Is there anything else you need from me? Pick up the telephone and act like you're on the phone. Have a friend call you and talk to you at the same time. Make it look like it's important. It's a business phone call. It's something you're doing, or you hey, or they're in the middle of talking, like, I'm not trying to be rude. Excuse me. I have to take this phone call. Is there anything else you need? Here are the kids, okay. I gotta get on the phone. Always make yourself busy until you perfect gray rocking.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome tip, actually. Because yeah, I think what I see in the group is that sometimes they're struggling because they're at the beginning of it. And like you said, once you get past that point where you've already healed, and then it would become second nature, because you don't want to be bothered with this person anyhow. So you're just like, hey, all right,
exactly.
See you later.
And you have to think, a narcissist operates strictly off of all your senses. Sense of smell, sight, taste, touch, so if you think about it, everything that they do has something to do with some of your senses. You had a favorite cologne that you used to let them know that it was their favorite cologne, and you may smell it all the time. They purposely wear that cologne when they come around. What does that cologne do? It's going to ignite memories, good memories. There's certain clothes that you used to like, a certain haircut that you used to like. They purposely get that hairstyle, or they purposely get that haircut. There's certain clothes that you like to see them in. They're purposely going to wear that type of clothes to get around you. There's a certain way, some of the women like that old deep, very white voice. They'll purposely bring it down a few octaves, because they know the frequency in their voice is going to touch your heart. It's going to touch, some of y'all pregnant as soon as they start talking. They know exactly what what to do to make you tick, or to pull you back in. Those are all the things that you're putting up defense systems, defense mechanism to prevent any kind of entry into your heart. They've already been in your heart. They tore your heart up. Now that you're out of the situation, you've kind of backed out of the firefight. Now you have to do whatever strategically you can to protect your heart, to pull yourself out of the fight. The moment you fall for just the, hey girl, or hey baby, as soon as you fall for that old sexy fluttering the eyes, or all of a sudden they're wearing that push-up bra that's up under their chin, or, you know, them Stacey Adams, if they still wear them, Stacey Adams, you know, everything that you can do to protect your heart, you got to protect your heart. And that's why no contact is so important. No contact, because you feel like you're in a fog. You feel like you're confused. The more they talk, you can't think straight. That gaslighting has got you confused. You're in a fog. It's like you can't think straight. You can't make decisions for yourself. The longer you are no contact, for those that can go no contact, the longer you are no contact, the more that fog starts lifting up, the more you're starting to think clearly, to a point where what many people have done, like, I cannot believe I did this. How did I end up in this situation? Now you can see all the things in the games that were played, but while you were in it and that fog was on your mind, that we call it that narcissistic fog, you weren't thinking straight. You can't think straight. And the longer you are away from them, the less they have to manipulate you to keep you in that, it's almost like keep you isolated. If you keep a prisoner isolated, they're going to believe everything that you say. But when you get them away from you and they start, their minds start clearing up, they're going to realize everything that you were saying was a lie or propaganda or something.
Yeah, and that's true too. And because I think that's, like I said in the group, I think a lot of the women they struggle with is, now, well, they struggle with going gray rock. And then the other thing that they struggle with is, like you said, when the narcissist will say something really nice or wear something really nice. I've had one victim tell me, yeah, you know, well, he was saying, hey, beautiful. And, you know, yeah. And then it reels them back in. For myself, I was fortunate to be able to go no contact because we didn't have any children together. So when I went no contact, you know, we never spoke ever again. But for some people, when they use that piece when they're exchanging the children, and then they try to reel them in and say, oh, how are you doing? Let's go have lunch. And then before they know it, they're pulled back in.
Right. I mean, you know, the hardest thing when you still care about a person and they're having a conversation and you're staring at them, you're face to face and you're staring at them, and your whole mind is, wow, you are so beautiful, you're so handsome, and you're just mesmerized by them all over again. They make sure, they purposely, if they know that you were like that, they purposely come around to make sure you see them again. But it gets to a point where you begin to heal and they come around and you're looking at them like, and I always use my friend Shrek, you know, now you look like Shrek, and now you're looking at them in disgust like, ew, you know, and they can sense that you're just looking at them like, why are you standing here? You look awful. You look horrible. You have morphed into a new type of person, and that's not the person I've ever been attracted to. That's not anything that I was ever attracted to. And ew, you know, they make sure they pose and look at you in a sexy way, and it repulses you. It takes a while to get to that point. And most people, if they work on it, they'll get to that point where they'll look and they'll literally start repulsing them. That narcissist can feel that repulsion. They can sense that even in the look in your face. Ew.
Yeah, but and like you said, yeah, it probably takes time though. It will take them time for them to get to that point, because when they're first starting off, a lot of times they struggle with that. And lastly, what is the thing that you wish you knew when you first started your career?
Yeah, I wish I would have knew about narcissist abuse then. If I would have knew about narcissist abuse then, and what it looked like, I think I probably would have been able to help more people, because a lot of people, I took them to a certain point in their recovery, but now hindsight, you know, and as a young therapist, I'm glad I don't regret, because I learned in the process. There's a lot that I learned as a young therapist. There's a lot that I learned, and I'm glad I had those learning experiences. I did, personally and professionally. I wish I did know about narcissist abuse, because I'm thinking of the people that came through there and I didn't catch it. That I was doing marriage, you know, a lot of times I did marriage counseling and I didn't catch it. And I sent these people back home thinking that we can resolve or help this relationship. And in actuality, I didn't realize that they were dealing with a narcissist, and that narcissist was never going to change. I didn't know. So now hindsight, when I think of some of the cases, I'm like, man, I sent them back and I didn't give them resolve. I sent them back into they're one of the statistics that I'm talking about. You know, let's work this out. And the narcissist was pointing at the victim, you know, and I'm looking at the victim like, hey, you know, let's see what we can fix, making them feel re-victimized all over again. So, you know, that is a regret, but I mean, it's a learning experience, but I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known.
Yeah, we only know what we know though. So I mean, you know, once you learned about it, you were able to help so many people, and you're still helping so many people.
Thank you.
Like I said, like in our group, we constantly, and on our page, we constantly share your information. So it's getting out to everyone, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we are so glad that we were able to have you on. Can you tell us, we'll tell the listeners where they can find you, because you're on Facebook, and then you also have the YouTube channel as well. So where they can find you so they can listen to your information.
So I am on YouTube. I'm under Dr. Carmen Bryant, Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. You can also find me on Facebook. The page that I have is Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. And then I have I don't even know why I have the professional page there, because I do the exact same thing on both pages, but it's Psychological Health Consultants and Services. I am on Instagram. I don't do a lot on Instagram, but I just post, the clips not the clips, but like the links to the video. So I don't do a lot on Instagram, except for sometimes the interview that I did just recently, or I'm learning. So I'm not a techie like some people. I'm not a millennial, so I'm not a techie yet, but I am on there under Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. And then I do have a podcast. If you look under Podbean, that is my platform under Podbean, you will find me under Overcoming Narcissist Abuse. And you can listen to my podcast there. And usually I share whenever I upload a new podcast, but you can find me there. But you can also find my podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and I'm probably missing one. But most of the major ones you can usually find. If you put Overcoming Narcissist Abuse on there, you'll find my podcast on there.
Yes, and then you also, you do therapy, but you also do coaching as well for people that are outside of the state of Washington.
Yes, in the state of Washington, I offer counseling services, and since we're, with the COVID-19, I do only online. So it's by appointment only online for Washington state residents. Those that are outside the state of Washington, I do offer coaching services. And if you go to my YouTube channel, under my videos, all my information is there. It's under Dr. Carmen Bryant at outlook.com. You can email me, and I will provide the rates for the coaching, my coaching fees. And usually I get filled up really quick. So they want to come, you got to come on.
Yes, thank you. And then also one final place you can catch Dr. Carmen Bryant. For those of you listening, if you haven't registered, please go and register. She will be on our August 8th Virtual Domestic Violence Support Empowerment Series. And that is with Narcissistic Domestic Violence Healing and Support Incorporated, or for short, NDV Healing and Support Incorporated, nonprofit organization. So we are glad to have her here on the podcast, and as well as our virtual session. So please go and register for that as well. And thank you again, Dr. Carmen Bryant. It really was a treat having you on, and we look forward to seeing you at the empowerment session. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.